The Particular Abilities of Marinette and Her Discovery of Them by Plants Are Fun 06, a Miraculous Ladybug, Batman, crossover fanfic. Chapter 13, Guardianship, New Bases, and Little Siblings. Guardianship was hard, to say the least. It took up a lot of time. And it was only because, by the good grace of her amazing, wonderful, absolutely marvelous partner, and him doing audio recordings and braille copies of Master Fu's old translations, and deciphering any of the still coded ones so she could actually do her job as guardian. She didn't know what she would do without him. His time had come. Magic worked in funny ways. It was the only thing keeping him alive at 188 years old. No one, not even guardians, were supposed to live so long. It was only because it was necessary for Master Fu to survive, so that the miracle box would not be left without a guardian, did the magic connecting him to the miraculous box preserve his life. Once the universal balance that was the miraculous box felt that Marinette was ready for the role, it relinquished Master Fu of his duties, and by extension his life, leaving her to take the position. She did not know what the universe felt. She under no circumstances felt ready. Marinette took Master Fu's death hard. He was a lot to her. A mentor, a grandfather of sorts, a confidant. She could tell him everything or tell him nothing, and he would understand. She never did tell him much of anything, though. She told him bits and pieces. Told him things that happened when she was on the run, hopping between cities on foot or on train. Similar things to what she told her psychiatrist when she was a child, knowing that as long as she didn't mention anything of Nandam Parbat or any direct abuse she received, then the psychiatrist was legally prohibited from telling another soul what Marinette revealed. He knew that something absolutely horrid happened to her. Apparently, souls did not just activate because someone tripped and skinned their knee. No, something absolutely awful had to happen. And even more than that, you had to be absolutely aware of everything in the situation. There were more than a few records of awakened souls dreaming of occasions that would be dire enough to activate the connection, but they did not have complete awareness of the situation, and therefore did not activate the soul. Activation basically mattered on perspective. Kinda sucky for the poor Hashin of the goat. One of the more recent, for the records they had 400 years ago was recent. A lot of these records reached the thousands, and many more surpassed it. The only thing keeping the records intact was preservation magic. Activated Hashins remembered a past life, recall a past life through a dream where they were being murdered. But by the time they realized they were going to die a gruesome death, they were already too incognizant from blood loss that the Hashin's activation did not take place, and they did die only minutes later. Sad, but Marinette guessed that not having a weird magical soul that could give someone superpowers and save one's life was the norm of life, despite it not actually being fair. Then again, maybe it was better that he didn't have that realization when fully cognizant. All of the recorded souls that had been activated outside had terrible stories attached along with the realization of the terrible consequences of these stories. All but one included a confirmation of a horrendous death to themselves. One that didn't was a father who was a Hashin of the Ox. His daughter was being dragged off by slave traders after not being able to pay the king's property taxes. His soul had activated, and he had managed to kill all the traders and get his daughter, and afterwards be killed for witchcraft, because normal humans shouldn't be able to, if the text were to be believed. Ran as fast as a horse and slaughtered the man with his bare hands before breaking the metal chains that bound his daughters with his teeth, running back to the village with her, only later for hundreds of guards to come to his property and burn it with the entirety of his family inside, as they believed him to be a demon or a monster of sorts. Horrific was an understatement. The others weren't any better. One was the Hashin of a dragon. The girl was 17 and kidnapped. After months of abhorrent things being done to her, she was about to be killed, and her soul was activated. Another Hashin of the Mouse. An Egyptian woman, a slave, was being starved and was on the verge of death when her soul was unlocked, and she was able to multiply the scraps of food and clean water that was given to her and the rest of the slaves. So yeah, horrific. While not knowing that you had a magical soul that can give you magical powers, it sure did seem that being completely ignorant of it meant you had a better life. Master Fu had even asked her to write down her own story. The history and knowledge they had on the Hashins was next to non existent. They hadn't even known they created Hashins and bound their souls to this plane of reality when the Mosushi originally created the miraculous. And once they did figure out the connection between these people and the miraculous, they didn't even truly know all the limits of the Hashin, the most powerful ever recorded being Diathy, when she used her magic to evolve the Atlanteans at an extremely increased rate, so they would be able to survive underwater when the city of Atlantis was sunk by the Black Cat. But they didn't know if that was the limit or the cap of how much power a Hashin could exhibit. Creating records of important moments in her life that related to her being a Hashin was incredibly important. She was completely okay with doing the weekly journal entries on her magic progression and her connection to the miraculous. She quite enjoyed being able to go back to see her progress, but writing down what happened when she unlocked her connection, typing Braille into a paper of the worst experience in her life, something that to this day she had nightmares on, then having someone read the Braille so they could copy it into the grimoire. She hated the idea of it. She hated when she got pity about her eyes. She hated how people would occasionally ask about how it happened, how people asked her if she was in a fire. She would always correct them and simply say, "I was in an acid attack when I was young." She hated, no, loathed the look she would get from people, how they would act as if she needed comfort. She didn't, and just invite themselves to give her a hug. Yeah, shit happens and life sucks. It's time to get over it. She was fine. No, she wasn't. And definitely didn't want pity from whoever read what she wrote down. She was under no impression that other people wouldn't read the grimoire. She likely would meet other magic users or people who studied magic in the future who would request to read the grimoire or even about Hashins. No one, and Marinette meant no one, understood the entirety of who she was, of what she had gone through, and there was no putting it down in the book that predated most written languages that would truly capture that. Marinette was okay with having only one person know both sides of her, even if their knowledge was limited. Now, with him gone, it hurt. It made her chest ache in a way even she could not see. Chat Noir might have known about her blindness and her sight, but she kept any and all information regarding her personal life to a minimum. Minimum meaning none. She couldn't risk him finding out about her identity. Not after Chat Blanc. She was a fairly public figure in Paris. Certainly not everyone knew her, but her parents owned one of Paris's most famous bakeries, and her becoming even more popular figure in Paris, with Chloe really cementing her in social media influencer status. All it took was one mention of, "Hey, you know that blind gymnastic girl?" and Chet Noir possibly making the connection for him to find out. She knew that the miraculous provided glamour to ensure that people didn't recognize her, but she wasn't sure how far the glamour went. Could it stop someone from making a reasonable conclusion based on facts and evidence? While she didn't discuss civilian life with Chat Noir, she could discuss everything in her life that was related to Ladybug. And while she couldn't discuss the loss of Master Fu with her parents or friends, she didn't want to imagine what her papa, or worse, her mommin, would do if she mourned the loss of an old man she went to help often. They would probably think she was being molested, and could talk with Chat Noir about it, share her grief with him. In all honesty, Marinette didn't think, no, she knew she wouldn't be able to do any of this without him. He was her partner, confident, but most importantly, he was her best friend. He was always there. But she had a job. No matter the grief she was going through, she had a job, an incredibly important one at that. one that was being compromised. She could keep all her guardian stuff, miraculous box, potion ingredients, all the scientific samples food left for her in her room, and used it as needed. But her parents could come across them. Her mother typically cleaned her room on Saturdays while she was out for gymnastics. Telling her mom to stop doing so would get her questions, and her mom didn't trust her to clean her room since the time she was 7 and had cleaned all the surfaces in her bedroom with chemicals. Marinette had started crying because she had cleaned everything and told her that she liked things dirty, and Mummin should just leave them that way. Mummin wouldn't have her living in a filthy room, and Marinette couldn't really explain why everything was just better dirty, because it made it so that she could slightly see it. No doubt Mummin wouldn't stop cleaning, and how was she going to explain all this stuff? She could possibly hide the miraculous in a box she kept all her hats in. Maybe could pass off the bottles filled with various liquid and braille labels as stuff for her plants. But the Bunsen burner? The large cast iron cauldron? All the beakers and test tubes? No, her parents would get suspicious. They would ask questions. If it wasn't clear, Marinette did not like questions. Which brought her here. What the hell is crunching? Bug, why are we here? Where are you taking me? Chat Noir questioned. And what are we walking on? Chat Noir questions, tiptoeing closely behind her. I don't know what the crunching is. Bones. But she wasn't going to tell him that. Okay, so what about everything else, Bug? I know you're going through a lot with Master Fu. I miss him too, but I know you were really close with him. And I've lost people I'm close with and feel for you. But I feel like scavenging through the catacombs is going a little far. Chat Noir was taking large steps on his toes, trying to avoid the crunching. This isn't about Fu. Well, it kinda is. You know how I'm like guardian now? Ladybug asked. Yeah, I was kinda there for the whole I name you Ladybug, the guardian of the mother box stuff, so I'm aware. Good to know Chat Noir hadn't lost his sense of sarcasm. Well, that's kind of why we are here. Ladybug tried to explain. Chat Noir huffed. In the catacombs? Bug, we've been down here for over an hour and a half. We last saw graffiti an hour ago. We gone down at least 5 separate ladders. I'd like to stay where I know people have been. And seriously, what is that crunching? Chat Noir's voice faltered. He probably knew what the crunching was, just didn't want to accept it. Don't be a pussycat. And, well, I'm having an issue with being the guardian. There's quite literally no way I can cover it up. My mom cleans my room and would find my stuff. And even if there was a way to hide it, I can't exactly brush off my literally mixing a potion in my room. You remember how many minor explosions Fu created? And with me being blind, as I know, brushing it off as a science experiment isn't going to work. Yeah, I get that, but why are we here? You may not need light with your Hashin Toph Magic Girl-esque sight, but I'm a normal human being that requires light to see, he sassed. Use the flashlight, Ladybug suggested. Chat Noir practically screeched. This thing has a flashlight? It's literally a magic multi-purpose device that literally morphs into a suit whenever we need. Did you really think it didn't have a flashlight? She saw him fumble with his bow staff, and his jaw dropped at what she guessed was the flashlight activated. She just rolled her eyes and continued moving forward. Here we are, walking up to a large industrial metal door, and gesturing to it with a huge smile. This is your solution to your guardian problems? Ladybug just nods enthusiastically. Care to explain how this will solve your problems? Oh, well. She brought her hand forward, feeling around the door before both hands met the keyhole and rusted padlock and the door handle. Just break the lock. I'll explain everything later. Chat Noir, a bite uneasily, axe kicks the lock, and after a few minutes of messing around with the keyhole, they were able to force open the door. Ladybug practically skipped inside, and Chat Noir followed very carefully behind. Ladybug saw as Chat Noir dragged his flashlight alongside the wall, before fixating on one point. Die better finshin Sutlet, Chat Noir muttered to himself. German must mean restroom. You know German? He asked, surprised. Yeah, not a lot. I can hold a conversation. I enjoy learning languages, Ladybug explained. Do you know any more? Chat Noir inquired. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. If the German means anything, this may be one of the bunkers the Nazis used for World War II. Most are abandoned, but some you can tour. But with how deep we are, this one is probably abandoned. Okay. Why, in the name of all that is sacred, are we God knows how deep in an abandoned Nazi bunker, while Rena and Carapace are handling patrol when it's our day to do it? Chat Noir demanded. Ladybug was not letting Chat's anger at the situation get to her. So I was meditating on everything. Really allows me to, let focus on everything else in my life go, and simply focus on my soul. What happens when I do that is I can see really far, and I just happened to stumble along this huge open space under the city and in the catacombs. I just thought maybe, just maybe. Oh God, Bug, please don't. I'd like to welcome you to the Miraculous Team's new secret base. She threw her arms up and gave Chat Noir the biggest smile he had ever seen from her. He looked at her as if she was crazy.